Yeah, what a setup for this match here. The San Francisco Shock versus the Los Angeles Gladiators. Now, Custer said, you know, part of the reason he gave his prediction over towards the San Francisco Shock was because he felt like they had the playoff experience, and he didn't really have faith in the Gladiators, I suppose, in these high-pressure scenarios. It's an interesting point that gets brought up often, but this Shock roster is not the same that ended up winning the 2 championships. It has changed drastically over time, and I was thinking again, I mentioned it beforehand, but I think the Shock are really desperate to get to Hawaii just to have that experience of playoff scenarios with this new form of Shock that we're seeing. They haven't been to Hawaii yet, same with the Gladiators.
Yeah. I think it's so important for both of these teams to have their style tested against the other best teams in the world. Yeah. Probably the best teams in the world if we continue the trend from the Summer Showdown, honestly. So I think for the Shock, just seeing whether these Rhine and Orisa-based compositions actually work when you play them against the Eastern teams. And for the Gladiators, can you match up? You're playing similar stuff, but are you as good as the Eastern teams? So take a look at the Shock starters here. They're fielding Ants as well, whose mechanics are still spectacular, man. It's just that the Shock sometimes struggle to be able to generate that space for him. But yeah, he really hasn't missed a beat. He's just come straight back in and he's performing at a top level. I feel like it's just that the Shock are struggling to generate space for him, honestly. And so that, to me, is one of the biggest reasons that they've gone towards these slower defensive compositions, is to give Ants room to breathe.
Yeah, and it has been paying dividends, honestly, over the course of the series. As much as the Dallas fans have been huffing the copium about, you know, the team, we're not trying. Okay, but it was still a good performance from the Shock overall in the series earlier today. Their opponents, however, the Gladiators, I think, are going to be putting up much more of a fight, because that's a team that, Johnny was saying it, top 2 in the West right now. I think definitely this team has been looking on fire recently. They are really coming alive all together. These comps that they've been playing with, especially with the ball comps, I mean, it's something that it feels like it's almost natural for them.
Yeah, they were one of the first teams, actually, that started experimenting with ball comps, even before we realized that that's the direction the meta was going in for the Summer Showdown. So they've had more time than other teams. They've also decided to go in the direction of what they thought the meta was, instead of Atlanta and the Shock, who you could argue have gone in the opposite direction to the meta. From what we saw in the Summer Showdown, with Shanghai winning, playing ball, and Chengdu doing so well with the ball, Zen, Tracer, a lot of the top teams in the West have actually gone in the opposite direction. Specifically, Atlanta and Shock have gone in the opposite direction. So that is the real story of this game to me, is in the Western region, what meta reigns supreme? If the Shock manages to make it out of this match, the 2 teams that the West are sending like to play Reinhardt, Brent. That is not how we thought this meta was going to go when we saw the hero pools.
No, but that's the beauty of it, actually, is you find that the meta evolves over time. Even if there's not many balance changes in play, it's interesting. It develops over time, and teams come up with their own theories, and especially when we thought it was essentially going to be figured out at the back end of the last tournament cycle. Not the case. The team's still throwing in these new compositions. It's made it very entertaining to follow. But yeah, that's what we're waiting for, the answer in terms of what composition is really the West going to decide to be the dominant one. I mean, we could have the 50-50 split, I suppose, if the Gladiators and Atlanta Reign are going over to Hawaii.
Sure. But I think for this first map, remember, Gladiators higher seed, they did better in the Countdown Cup regular season portion, so they get to select this map. Ilios is where they're going. It's a map that favors the Winston-based compositions. Smurf is in here, I think, because the Shock might choose to lean into Winston-based comps at some degree. And Ants is going to be playing Hitscan. I have found it really surprising that the Shock did not decide to build around Violet Zen this stage, because Violet Zen historically has been the best in the league. Instead, to me, when I watch the Shock, it feels like everyone is building around Ants, or sometimes Glister when he comes in to play long-range Hitscan for them. But Ants absolutely needs to pop off here, and for the Gladiators, this Genji Tracer has one job, and it's to shut him down.
Yeah, the dive needs to be good here from the Gladiators. You can see them sending in that Bayonet, that Shu. And that's going to connect onto the one target. It's a bit of a waiting game. Just trying to play positioning and try and take away space from one another. Arn's obviously just firing away. And, I mean, we've said it numerous amounts of times, but the guy's mechanics just have not dwindled in the time that they took off. And look at the shots as well. Definitely trying to find them, but that's a wonderful sleep dart from Shu. This could set up the dive excellently. Shurikens come down. Kevster missing the dash as he just rolls back out of the way of it. And a big Bionade. To the shock again, going to be pushing them back. No one really unlocking the point, but he's already built up this Deadeye. He's channeling it, going to let it rip. Not going to find too much there, but he doesn't even need the flashbang to connect. Catches it onto Birdering. A nice little setup there. Muse taking so much damage as he tries to engage in. Surely going to be falling here, but it could be an even fight.
Skewed managing to pick up turnover, and it is pretty huge actually. The Gladiators are excellent at being able to stabilize in these kind of positions. So they got themselves potentially an advantage. There's a Tracer and a Diva coming off the respawn queue. So now Gladiators have opened up a bit of space for themselves. They've stopped the Shock from holding forwards. Now they can make their way in around the side again. Ooh, the halt into the window doesn't quite work there for the Shock though.
Yep, couldn't quite find it. You can see Kevster's just putting a ton of pressure onto Nero, who presumably has had to back out of there. Yeah, doesn't have the recall, but now they can start to try and take down Muse. That's the Primal Rage built up nice and early, and Twilight straight off the edge. Great setup for them as well, taking space slowly and just using the ultimates when it mattered. It's a clean teamfight win for them.
I'll tell you what as well, Shu hits a sleep dart onto Twilight that stops them being able to rotate. It might seem like a small thing, but if you've got a body on the floor, the Shock are essentially paralyzed. They can't just leave Twilight just asleep on the floor and all make a rotation away from the Gladiators. And so they essentially get pinned there because Twilight is paralyzed. Excellent work and a very cheap team fight. Only one Primal required to flip this over. Now the Gladiators are holding forward so they can get huge value out of a Dragon Blade.
Oh, here's the Nano Blade.
In theory.
Locked up onto the side, and he's got the dash reset. Kevster with two. He's going to look for the third, but eventually that flail's going to be whacking him, donk, right on the head. Still not going to be matter. I mean, it doesn't matter what we want to use.
I love the
donk,
sound
bonk.
effect. I love the sound effect. It is so satisfying. And it's so crucial as well, actually, landing these whip shots. The mechanics required to play Brig in this kind of comp, in this meta, are very demanding. And Violent and Skewed are some of the best we have in the West. Some of the best there is in the world.
Got to be able to find your mark amidst quite a bit of chaos. Gladiators are going to invest now. It's going to be the pulse bomb along with the rally, and they're going to be pushing forwards. Nero down pretty early on here. Bionade connecting there onto Smurf. The Deadeye channeled up. Arn's kept alive there by the Immortality Field, but the pressure that they're putting out on him right now, the only thing he can do is backpedal and fan the hammer. It's not much. Still might be able to get a kill, but not quite. Pulse bomb into the corner as well there from Nero. Didn't actually get the kill onto Muse like he was hoping for.
Great team fight from the Gladiators. So much pressure being applied to Ants. You don't necessarily have to kill him first, but you definitely have to get in his face and stop him from being able to find value. And they just surround him from all areas. Specifically as well, Birdring won the Tracer 1v1, so Nero wasn't a threat anymore, and it allowed the Gladiators to forge a path forwards. Again, this is in Kevster's hands.
Yeah, another Nano Blade comes in. There's one of the dash resets, gets the second one. It's just magic for them. And with 96% and counting, it's all over now for the San Francisco Shock in this round. The Gladiators were so efficient at using ultimates there on the defense. That is so impressive from them. It was never an over expenditure, always on the defense with the right tools to try and answer the Shock as they were trying to contest.
Yeah, they're really good in terms of their ult cycling. What I've been so impressed with about the Gladiators is that they're extremely good at holding their own in the neutral game against comps that are better. So the Shock's comp is generally speaking going to be better in the neutral because you have Ants putting down consistent pressure, you have opportunities, you have a shield, stuff like that. But the Gladiators just hold their own in those fights and wait for someone to create an advantage for them. Like a sleep dart coming from Shu or some crazy shot from Kevster or Birdring. They wait for those openings and then they're decisive with how they capitalize. But now the Shock are going to change things up quite a lot. Smurf in so that he can play some ball. They've been doing that with Smurf and Super actually over the course of the Countdown Cup. Nero's Farah has been deadly.
Yeah, potentially his best hero actually at times. I definitely thought it back when he was playing on the Guangzhou Charge.
Sure. His Torbjorn is pretty nasty at the moment as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. Gets a lot of playtime as well, I guess, against a lot of the Tracer Sombra comps that have been played. But you can see Birdring, he's not missing a shot. This is a ton of damage that's being applied to that Fire Mercy duo. And he's not even really being assisted. The Discord Orb, sure, but he is really putting a number on them. And it's buying them enough space. Nero can't really push across that building. He just has to send in the rockets from afar. And it means the Gladiators, look at that. They've already flipped over the point in their favor. Ans has gone down as well. They're really not getting what they're looking for. The Shock currently just struggling to find openings.
And they weren't able to punish Muse. Muse was hanging around at about 50 health that entire time, and there was no punish available. Nero just can't get in position to be able to do damage and help his team on the point because of this constant poke from Birdring. And Ants not quite in the right place, even though he was doing a ton of damage. He's got up to his pulse bomb now. Toyobin ate the one from Kevster that came out earlier.
And here's a nano boost. Nero needs to do something of this right now, but he's chasing a very slippery target. It's a game, a bit of a mind games there, as he was just trying to hunt down Birdring. Eventually found him though. Ended up guessing incorrectly, I suppose, in the direction that he wanted to run to. And now Nero can safely just hold close to the point and hammer in the rocket. So the Shock, not out of it just yet. Going to be flipping the point over now. Can start building up a bit of percentage.
And now that Nero can choose his positioning much more freely, well, actually, he's just gone back to the same kind of passive setup, where he's going to be eating poke damage from Shu and Birdring. So this does actually allow the Gladiators an opportunity to get back in towards the point. They've got double support ultimate as well. Muse is so weak, he needs his health kit, and it's not there.
Yeah, it was Kevster that took it, I think. That's a classic ranked movement. Yeah, the 150 HP target eating up that mega health pack. You hate to see it, but we see the mines onto the point here. That's Smurf just trying to push away the Gladiators. They have a ton more pressure that they can apply to this point. And Nero's actually got the pick off onto Birdring, but the sleep onto Muse is nothing to disrupt it, but they're turning the fight anyway. A lot of ults for the Gladiators, but they might not even need them. Shu just putting in the volley damage. Nero goes down, and he's applying the Discord Orbs expertly. The rest of the Gladiators following up on all of this one. Smurf nanoed so that he can just have the durability to try and contest up this point. 55%, he will go down eventually. It's still counting up for the Shock, but it's almost a matter of time until it eventually fades over and flips over. And there we go, the Gladiators winning the team fight out. The damage they've got, the picks they were finding, it was just a matter of time.
Yeah, and it flipped as well. Nero goes for a barrage and gets punished, and suddenly the Gladiators sniff out an opening, and they're in. The Shock used a lot of good ultimates to try and hold on to that too. They do not have great tools at their disposal. Birdring as well has attack visor here. That melts through Pharah Mercy combos.
Pharah's getting ate up a lot of it. Just playing around the lighthouse for now. Nero's just trying to avoid the line of sight of it, but look at that tracking. Birdring just does not miss. Oh my goodness. Smurf standing still trying to receive a bit of healing, and he just finds himself the recipient of even more bullets coming from the opposition. Hans holding on to this pulse bomb now. Needs to get something with it. Almost flipping it over. That is a good start. It's going to be cleaving right through space, but using that self-destruct, and that means he's going to be able to get back right into the mech. And you can see the fight continuing. Nano boost onto Nero. Needs to get a pick. He's already found two. Big concussion blast, sending Kevster right off the edge, but it's 99%, and it's still ticking.
Skewed popped his rally in the midst of all of this. Violet with the res. Ants killed again. And the Gladiators, they're finding advantages. Shu taking a 1v1. Shu against Twilight in the back.
Twilight ends up winning this one. They're still trying to fight this one out. Kevster, he's got the pick. He's back into the fight onto Smurf, but another one. Nero sends him straight off the edge. That's space gone. It's about halfway capped up here, but the Shock's still in control of the point for now. What a team fight. Going all over the place. Multiple plays happening. Shu trying to take some risks as well, trying to take out Twilight in the middle of it.
If he found that kill, I think that would have turned the fight in favor of the Gladiators, so can see what he's going for there. But now the Shock are in control. They have a nano as well. Violet is so weak. Discord Orb on him. Nero's got to get value here.
Oh, he gets shut down! Shu finds it, Nero, he's in shock! Hands at the back of the head, he can't believe what's just happened! That was the way that they were going to stay in this map! With the overtime going now, Nero's back into the fight with the res, but it's too late! The tactical visor, it's just going to be chunking him down from range. The Gladiators are entirely healthy. 6 on the point, no one's going to be touching, that's map 1 going to them.
What a performance there. The shutdown on Nero whenever he came in was phenomenal. Excellent work from Shu and Birdring to keep their focus on that key player from the Shock. But you got to say this, Brent, that second round was extremely hard fought. I think, you know, the Gladiators had their read of how they wanted to play the first one for sure. But that second round when the Shock tried to match, not quite match, but similar styles at least of composition, it was extremely close. And that's Gladiators' map pick. I'm going to expect the map picks to be influencing this series a lot, especially when the teams have such drastically different comps they want to play. It's not over yet by a long shot for the Shock.
Exactly. One map lead here for the Gladiators, but now loser map picks for the Shock are going to be moving into a bit of comfort on the next map, which is going to be theirs to pick. See if they're going to stand a chance now to maybe put a map on the board against this Gladiator squad that looks almost unstoppable in the West right now. We'll find out just after this short break, so don't go anywhere.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by TeamSpeak, the official voice supplier of the Overwatch League.
Welcome back from the break, everybody, and yep, this series definitely quite back and forth. The clash of styles that we've seen from both of these teams thus far. It seems like the Gladiators with the early edge as well. It was their map pick of Ilios, perhaps intentional as well to try and force the Shock into more uncomfortable territory in terms of matching similar styles of compositions as well. Worked out in their favor. I mean, that's a 2 rounds win to get the map. We see some subs happening. Mr. Delisi, super in for Smurf, which probably is going to indicate that they're wanting to play more Reinhardt compositions, which they have been playing pretty much this entirety of the tournament cycle of the Countdown Cup.
Yeah, they've been peppering it in here or there. It's not that they run Rhine the entirety of the map. They just want the flexibility sometimes to move over to it if it's required. Similarly to running Smurf, they want, it feels like, the flexibility to sometimes pick up the Winston. And I think this map pick of Hanamura is a good one from the Shock. You do not want to be going towards Anubis, for example, where the Gladiators are just in their comfort zone running Winston, Ana comps, and getting Bird Ring on Sombra, for example. So, taking the Hanamura, make things a bit weird. The point A defenses and attacks, you've got a lot of different options in terms of compositions that you can run. This is also where Kevster was running some Pharah as well. So perhaps the Shock have a read into that and think that Ants can shut him down.
Very good point, yeah. Possibly mind games upon mind games, you know. Maybe they think we're going to play this, so we play this, so we counter with this. I don't know, just at risk of outthinking yourself maybe at that point as well. But
a lot of these teams, though, they do very heavy prep on their opponents. They know what their opponents are more likely to run on certain maps,
yeah, for sure.
how certain holds work. Yeah, these guys are all intimately familiar with each other. They play ranked with each other all the time, even when they're outside of playing scrims. So their tendencies, they are absolutely well aware of it. And the Shock are going to start out here with an Orisa defense. Running Nero on Torb. Like I said earlier, Nero's Torbjorn has been... there aren't that many people playing Torb, alright? So the pool is kind of small, but I think he's the best Torbjorn in the league. He's been able to get immense value. His ultimates are really good, very aware. Just used to try and zone people away. And look at that. Muse looking for the hook and the choker. Whoa, I'm getting out of that.
Muse was giggling to himself. He was like, I'm going to come out on the hog. And then Choi was like, I'm not catching these hands. I mean, or in that case, a hook. He didn't want to get instantly picked, so he straight up backed away. It's very funny, actually. A bit of a kind of like micro strategy, I guess. The kind of things you notice over scrimming over a long period of time, I guess.
Look at this.
Like the tendencies of the teams that you're talking about, Josh.
The Gladiators are running a Babzen composition with the Genji. So they're going for Hangzhou Genji, similarly to what the Toronto Defiant were trying to run. And the Shock, at least for the moment, are just gobbling them up. A little headshot hit there by Nero as Choyobin goes into the backline and just kills two.
I mean, you have a much weaker neutral game with this composition, I feel, with this DPS line that you're running, compared to the damage output that Arns and Nero are putting out. The Genji just doesn't really cut the mustard. A phrase that I've been racking my brain over to understand. Is it because mustards are spicy and you have to cut it out into specific proportions? I don't know.
Not a clue. No idea. Yeah. Skewed making the move over to Brig. So that gives him a little more tankiness. Armor packs that Kevster can use. But in general, I think Kevster's going to really struggle to generate value here. He is a crazy good Genji, but this is tough.
That is good though. Bird Ring! That is naughty. Straight through the amp matrix. That is a damage boosted headshot arrow onto Super. I mean, he just got deleted. Poof, out of existence. And that opens things up.
They
the Gladiators
melted. They absolutely melted. I mean, we didn't see that from Birdring's point of view, but you got to imagine there was a shield in the way, right? That he had to destroy first. And yet the picks were instantaneous.
Oh, here it is. Wait a second. Any minute now.
Enemy turret.
Oh! Oh!
I mean, that's crazy. That's just Hangzhou things.
I think the Shock wanted to play aggressively past the amp matrix. So they were looking to try and maybe set up Super off onto the side, maybe a halt into something to try and capitalize. But if anything, it hasn't worked in their favor. Still, the Dragon Strike pushes them off. No more playing on the high ground for you. The Shock forced to relocate and re-push up the staircase. Luckily for them, though, in the middle of all of that, Arns was the one to get the pick. Kevster out of the fight means they can't really play with too much aggression, and they backed off instantly.
Kevster got shut down, I mean, so early on there, and he's still only at 75% of his blade. Make no mistake, they are getting success out of the Genji Hangzhou comp, but it's the Hangzhou doing the heavy lifting, not the Genji. Kevster there for the cleanup and nothing much else.
Window, and that's a South Destruct actually to push them away, potentially get a pick when they're trying to play around the amp matrix.
What do you do with Blade? I feel like a broken record here, Brent. I'm just wondering what on earth Kevster is going to try and do here.
Very difficult, but a Supercharger's in close quarters for both of these teams. Rally's engaged as well. Super, he's off the map. It's an amp matrix coming through. Kevster, he's just taken out Arns from afar. They rotated all the way around, and Arns had the high ground control, but this is looking like a massively fast time right now for the Gladiators. They've come fully prepared. They knew exactly what the Shock are going to be running towards them. Super now on the Wrecking Ball. That's just to try and stall it out, but Kevster now with the Blade. Forces out the Immortality Field, which I guess is some form of value, but nothing really much else. Probably all you can really hope for. The Shock still coming back into this fight, and in fact they're looking competitive while doing it. They have somehow turned this fight.
Yeah, they all came off the spawn, and the rally plus Immortality Field was enough for them to be able to get through the Blade. I have so many questions about the Genji pick. It seems semi-effective for being able to brawl. You can dash through the shields, you can create distractions, maybe you can get out with a deflect in an area where you perhaps wouldn't be able to if you're playing Tracer, but that Blade was some sad stuff. Nothing really going there for Kevster. And now Ants on the Widow.
Yeah.
That's so deadly.
This is comfort. This is it. This is where he likes to play on a long-range hit scan. I was watching him warm up, actually, after just coming off the back of his break.
Sandpaper in his desk.
From it. I mean, the guy was just, it's like he never left. He was just hitting shots like crazy. It's ridiculous. The guy is, he's an anomaly when it comes to being able to aim, but the fight continues here for the Gladiators, and in fact it's Twilight who goes down. The Shock, though, answering back. The Amp Matrix onto the high ground, obviously still active despite Twilight going down. They have the damage off of it. Meanwhile, in the back line, Kevster just trying to build up that Blade as best as he can, but it's hard to really get anything done, I suppose. I think the only target you're really pressuring away is Arns, because everyone else is so tanky.
Yeah, and it's not like he's doing a ton of damage in the middle of these fights either, but I think they're relying on Birdring at this point. Ants and Birdring staring at each other, shield in the way. Some of the value mitigated there, but Ants continues to do little bits of chip damage. Caught a body shot there on Shu, and he's almost got up to his infra sight. You can see everybody crouching along, trying to make sure they give Ants as few opportunities as possible.
That's the wall hacks there from Ants, popped off. Infra sight. The Birdring's ready and waiting. That is beautiful from Choi. Predicted it with ease, it seems. Like a book. Yeah, he knew exactly what they were setting up. The Dragon Strike to try and push him off the high ground. This time, the Shock had complete faith in Choi to eat it up. Didn't even move back preemptively. They knew how to win that team fight.
Okay, they have 2 ticks of permanent progress, Gladiators, but every time they've tried to come in that top right high ground, they have been stuffed. Kevster, at the very least, is going to create a distraction with this Blade when they engage. Might allow them some high ground control, force Ants back into spawn, that kind of thing. But the Shock have the rally to be able to sustain, and I'm looking at Nero. Nero's ultimates have been phenomenal at being able to deny space to his opposition. His Molten Core was very good the last time, just caught the Gladiators and penned them in. Here's the engage, though, and there's the Molten Core.
Yeah, the Molten Core's just being used so that they can essentially punish Super, who was caught in the corner in between his own shield. Yeah. They have
it did a lot of damage to Kevster.
The Molten Core just being catched, and yeah, not ideal.
And this is a little painful at this point from the Gladiators. They haven't even been able to set up a team fight. They're just getting stuffed. And Birdring with a desperation swap over to the Widow of all things, looking for the ego challenge on Ants.
It's a duel I would not want to take. The guy is pretty good. Still Birdring, we know that he's capable. Maybe he can pull off something. Right now playing really far back, have to respect it, but the San Francisco Shock investing every ultimate into it, pouring it all into this final fight. They almost ended up giving away a little bit too much there. 95.6% is what the Gladiators were able to achieve. Not quite the full capture. They got a little bit more off on the end of it, but not the capture, which is the important takeaway here. The Shock know what they have to aim for now as they swap sides and go into the attack.
Well, sign me up. I'm a self-ascribed Genji Hanzo hater. I haven't seen this comp be successful thus far in the Overwatch League, at least at the moment, against these brawly compositions. It doesn't seem to be particularly effective. It must have been working in scrims. These teams are not dumb. These players are not stupid. It must have been having some level of success. But when it comes to these match environments, the data that has been put before my eyes is that these Genjis are getting very limited value. Kevster popped his first Blade, got kind of destroyed, no big value out of it. He only just got a second Blade in the final moments of that team fight, or rather, he only got an opportunity to use his blade in the final moments there, and just immediately there was nothing happening. He died as soon as he pulled it out. That's an extraordinarily ineffective point B push from the Gladiators. They had so much time and so little success.
Yeah, only able to achieve that 95.6%. Not ideal for them. The Gladiators on defense now. Here's a bit of a replay.
Oh no,
see how
don't show it. Why are our replay observers so cruel?
Oh wow, yeah, shut down. I mean, the blade can't do anything against this what they were running. It has no targets other than Arns, and Arns is just going to save his grapple away out of range, and you're left high and dry. Anyway, that's in the past. And
hello, they found space here.
Oh, they got the hook. Choi got the hook. Oh, no, no, no.
They got the teleport as well. They were so ready for that. They had a whole set play designed just to catch space out, and he fell victim to it.
Tendencies of these players, Josh, you were saying it. I mean, they play each other in ranked all the time. They play each other in scrims. They know the little tiny differences in positioning that each player has and how to potentially capitalize off of it. Some big bionades coming in from Shu, but that is over. The Gladiators are going to try and contest this one.
Another great bionade, actually. That stops Choyobin from being able to use his heal. Gonna be able to get back now. Space demech as well, instantly. This is one of the first times in the Overwatch League you'll see a Reinhardt Hog composition have some success, but the Gladiators still want to fight.
Yeah, they're investing the ultimates into a fight that's already lost. Oh dear. The Shock, I mean, they were eating those bionades like a good hearty breakfast because they had Choi on the Hog, no one to eat it up, I suppose. Choi was definitely capitalizing off of it, but not enough to try and stop them. And I'm not even sure if the Hog was the plan there, but I felt like maybe it was just the thing that they were trying out of spawn. They got the hook, and they decided, well, let's carry it forwards.
I definitely agree with that. I don't think they would have intended to run Reinhog if they hadn't got the punish on space. They just wanted to go, go, go. Now Birdring's EMP is the only thing that stands between the Shock and tying this series up. He goes aggressive, but it's been countered by the Immortality Field. Great play by Twilight.
Twilight, that is impeccable stuff, and now the Transcendence, nothing to stop it. They push forwards. Nero as well, he's tracked down the opposition. Birdring tried to escape with the Translocator. He couldn't do it. The Gladiators, this is desperation. Muse is now on the wrecking ball just to try and stall it out, but no one has fallen on the Shock. They don't have the ults, but they've got the damage. The positioning has been set up. Ans is in prime position to rain down hell, and that's a capture. The Shock coming through big time there. Taking away the map. Obviously their map pick on Hanamura, but they're going to even up this series 1-1. What a display, what a performance.
Super's already out of his chair. Matthew DeLisi, they call him the finisher. They should call him the equalizer. He's been coming in early in these series, looking to retain or regain some kind of advantage for the Shock. And it's amazing how one team performing really well and having some set plays that work can make the other look so lost and honestly at times kind of chaotic and clowny. Like, the performance from the Gladiators on that map looked amateurish, and yet they are such a good team. That just speaks volumes, I think, to how much the Shock's game plan threw them off. The Shock had map pick, the Shock had some set plans, and the Shock won.
And it paid off big time. You can see a lot of the players on the Shock out of their seats as well. They're going to be talking about what to expect in the next map because, we are tied up at this series. 1-1 currently. The Gladiators going to be searching for a way to as well get their heads back into the game. We're going to find out soon enough after this break, so don't go anywhere, ladies and gentlemen. Even more Overwatch League action coming up soon. The Overwatch League skins from past seasons have returned. We've bestowed them upon you, so now is your chance to get one of your favorite previous legendary skins. The vault is open from August 24th, or through August 24th, I should say, and skins can be redeemed for 200 League tokens, which can be earned by linking your account on YouTube. So make sure you buy the skins you need. Josh, have you bought the Zenyatta one yet?
I haven't. I still haven't gotten around to it. I'm gonna miss this. I know it. I know it in my bones. I always, whenever there's an opportunity to do something like this, I always miss the window. I love that Zen skin though. It's so good. I say that as a big Zenyatta fan. You know, it's easy. I'm a one trick. It's the character I put the most time in for sure. I mean, speaking of which, Brent, I do have this kind of this issue, not necessarily an issue, but question about the San Francisco Shock. I thought they'd be excellent in the Countdown Cup. I was right, but for all the wrong reasons. I thought they would be playing around Violet, playing the Zen. I thought Glister would come in and play Tracer for them. I thought we'd see Super or Smurf play Ball, and they would play the kind of meta compositions on maps like Blizzard World that require you to play a little more divey styles and play around Violet Zen. And instead it feels like they've gone in a totally different direction, and I just wonder how far is it going to be able to get them. This series, I think, is going to tell us so much, because really for the Shock, we're looking at their form heading into the postseason right now. This is a team, this is a franchise that is looking for the three-peat, and people have talked about it not happening, the era's over, etc., etc., as Shock failed to make it to Hawaii. But they've ended with the best regular season record in the league, tied with Shanghai. So that's still phenomenally good. They're 12-4. And now it's all about what they can do in the postseason. So I still have so many questions. This match, I think, is a great idea for where the Shock are going to be at. What kind of form do they have heading into these most crucial games? Of course, with the Countdown Cup, but then even afterwards when we're talking about playoffs. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's a question that, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that they're writing the Shock off in terms of the three-peat. A lot of the discussion centered around playoffs is largely dominated by, Dallas or, Shanghai.
Yeah.
Rightfully so. I think those teams have looked the most consistent over the course of the season, but I say that, and then you look at the stats, and the Shock they've got the best kind of overall records going on. So it's an odd one for sure. This is going to be their opportunity though against the Gladiators, two teams that have yet to make it to Hawaii and are hoping to change it around. Obviously, one of them at the back end of this game is going to be going, whether we like it or not.
They will break that curse. The Gladiators map pick, they've taken us to Blizzard World. Love this pick because it forces the Shock to try and play Rhine comps on a map where I don't think it's particularly favored. It's what they've been doing a lot though, and the Gladiators will know that. They'll have a plan to try and deal with it too. Birdering on the Sombra. He's been criticized a little bit for getting these EMPs that don't land on too many targets, but I actually really like the way that Birdering plays Sombra. He's incredibly active at trying to set up win conditions for his team. And so I would expect him to be harassing them constantly. A lot of this is going to be about how much space can get value too.
What happened to Skewed there? I'm not sure how he got booped off to the side. Maybe that was something of his own making, but he was completely split from the rest of his team. That's good though from Muse. He's pushing him off the high ground, but Nero, I mean, Josh, you've been singing this guy's praises when it comes to the Tourbillon gameplay. Just sends in the Molten Ledge straight into the cranium of Shu. I don't know much about electronics, but I know that's not healthy for them.
No, not particularly. Extra rivets where there shouldn't be any. That may cause problems with any of your electronic equipment. And the Shock just went for a pretty predictable straight up rotate around the back through the arch, taking control of the high ground, and they found the picks on both of the support players. The Gladiators never had an opportunity to set up properly. Everyone on the Gladiators is a target. Space, Shu, Skewed. All of these players can get run over by the Rheincon.
That turret is so annoying. Eventually it's going to go down there. You can see the bubble onto Muse just to keep him nice and healthy, just so he can roll through the Shock, but with them laying down that amp matrix,
Violet's hiding for this.
Afford to play this. Ooh, yeah, Violet was trying to wait around. Kept positioning. Quick little blink across. That's a post bomb laid down. That turret is so annoying though. You can tell that it's really stopping him from playing as aggressively as he wants to. Grab off onto the side though. What a ballsy play there from Space. It catches. Is there any going to be some consistent follow-up? He has caught it onto 2 of them. In fact, make it a 3rd. This guy paving the way for the rest of his team.
Yeah, great performance. A hack there from Birdring as well onto Super meant the shield could not come back up. They're still fighting this though. The Shock committing a rally towards it, looking to keep the payload moving. The Gladiators team comp, there they go with the EMP. It catches both players in the back line.
Space fully charged up. I mean, he's just going to be tearing through them now. The EMP is a lovely setup for all of that. Good hold here for the Gladiators. This is what they were kind of planning around, I suppose, as well, when they were picking Blizzard World. We said at the beginning, it forces Shock to play these Reinhardt comps, and there's very long stretches, very long sight lines where the Shock are rotating slowly. They don't have Lucio to speed boost past a lot of these angles. That's what the Gladiators are trying to capitalize off right now. Ooh, that's a weird
window. Yeah, that's just to push the Gladiators away. These positioning, these rotations. Whoa, what? He's gone for another ballsy one.
He's gone for it. I mean, listen, you find an opportunity, you see that Choi Hoban's not in a fight, I can respect it. He thought they were going to path up to the stairs, but that's a bit of a misplay. In fact, it's a bit of an understatement from me. That's a massive misplay from Space.
They used trance as well in that fight. They really wanted to full commit to that, and then they just couldn't. The Torbolt was also really important from Nero.
Big Immortality Field eats up all that damage. Kevster gets nothing with the pulse bomb and was skewed down. Well, the Shock now with the rally advantage, pushing forwards. They've got the extra armor. Looking to try and win this team fight out. Still have to keep an eye on Kevster, but luckily they've got the turret to do a lot of that work. Catch the line of sight around, but the way that the Gladiators are losing this one, I mean, they're just getting staggered out and stalled out, losing a lot of players one at a time. Muse dropping the mines up, desperate to keep this point contested.
They're going to commit ults to this and be able to cap it, though. The Gladiators had their opportunities to be able to defend on point B, but it's all about the whiff of the ultimates, honestly. The trance and the grab that were invested to try and kill the Shock, they didn't get any value, and so that's unrecoverable. You didn't win the team fight, you ruined your ult economy, and so the Shock have an advantage now that they're snowballing forwards with. 3.5 minutes in the time bank. The Gladiators are now starting to get big ults online. They're going to go for an EMP Bionade here. Skewed has made the swap away from Brig, away from Bath, just to get this Bionade off, I think.
And they are indoors right now. Birdring has managed to, he's found himself in a very precarious position. They are not pre-firing him. He's going to get the EMP off, and there we go. He has caught it onto Twilight. Is there any sort of follow-up right now? Space, he really just can't push forwards there. That turret eventually will fall, but no one goes down from the Shock. A bit of an empty EMP there.
Yeah, clearly Birdring communicating to the rest of his team. Should I go for it? Are you ready to follow up? But it just wasn't there. They couldn't do it. There's the bubble onto Muse as he tries to initiate. Space going for another one of these long-range grabs. Just sees Choi Hoban off to the left.
Beautiful play from Space, this time finding the mark. Connects them all up, but this time it's Muse who goes down. The follow-up is not there. Space has been doing a good job of building up these grabs in a pretty rapid process. But the trouble is, the team just not in position to really get maximum damage off onto them.
And the Shock's composition is simpler. They just have to outlast, out-sustain the Gladiators, and they're off to the races. Look at how fast this is. Muse stunned up as well, needs the Transcendence, and Skewed with the weird-looking Ana pick. About to get close to his first
nano. The shatter! It's big. Multiple targets down on the floor. That's 2 minutes, 3 seconds.
Devastation.
Gladiators, yeah, I mean, they're going to be left scratching their heads over that one, I think, as well. It's your map pick, obviously. You get to take him to Blizzard World. You have an idea of how you want to play that, but really fell to pieces down checkpoint B.
And now I'm wondering, were the Gladiators a little rattled after Hanamura? You saw their faces as we came out of that map. They looked mentally boomed. And this has been an issue with the Gladiators, having that winner's mentality, always being able to jump back into it and give it your all, even when things get tough. They have been denied by Dallas, by Atlanta, about getting to Hawaii before. These are the scenarios where if you want to be a championship team, you have to step up. You have to not allow the failures of Hanamura, the failures of your Blizzard World defense to get you down and affect your future performance. We could see a real pivotal point here in the Gladiators' mentality.
If they're able to overcome this, absolutely. The narratives of them not being able to adapt or crumbling under the pressure will be partly put away. They still need to close out the series, obviously, I think, for most people to be having a lot of faith in them. Yeah, the Shock, we know what they're capable of as a playoff team. Yeah. I mean, the core of this roster being in these scenarios so many times, they're more than used to it. Obviously, it's just a DPS that's a little bit new to a lot of it with Glister and Nero in.
Yeah, and this Shock team, the comps that they're running, they really don't have to get that crazy with their execution. The Gladiators, the pressure is on them to be able to get the coordination working and get big value out of their EMPs, out of their grabs, etc. And they failed this time. That was a very poor defense from LA.
You're just trying to knock them off the high ground. Spinning around, the Shock are just gonna, well, they're like, okay. We'll drop down, we'll rotate to the point now, we're going to start to play together a bit here. Gibson needs to be careful. One rivet to the head, and it is over for him. He realizes that he's going to blink away, back off. But look at this turret position. It's nasty, honestly. It's going to catch Kevs there every time he tries to go for a flank, and Birdring for that matter. But they have taken early positioning.
There goes the turret. They know the Sombra's behind. Sombra could have translocated away, obviously. Birdring setting up with Muse to be able to get some damage. There it is.
Yeah, it's a kill onto Twilight. Birdring, though, ends up paying for his own life because of it, and that could have been a good setup. The Gladiators still have good positioning. That flashbang, though, oh my goodness, Muse has to roll out of there. So low. Nero going for the AFK strategy, just spamming down the one angle. Definitely works in my ranked games, so don't blame him. Obviously, stakes a bit higher in this time around compared to my ranked games themselves, but Gladiators now, you can see with this early positioning they've taken, already that's going to be 2 ticks. Someone needs to touch this. Super's going to be pushing forwards. Now to Deadeye. Glister just wants to catch one singular target, almost timing that boop with the pull of the trigger. Not quite getting it. Still need to keep some pressure onto the point, though. You got to remember that. The Shock trying to hold on. Good stick off to the side. That's Twilight down out of the fight. Kevster searching for the next target. Glister has a bunch of armor applied to him, so he's a hard task to try and take down. Choi, though, might get demected in the middle of this one, and that's a shatter. Perfectly timed as the shield of Skewed went down, but Muse is going to answer back with one of his own. Still a winnable fight for either side, and they want to be trying to invest everything to win it out. The EMP onto Choi. He is falling low and eventually going to get demected there. He tried to stay out of line of sight from it. Now they can start to maybe get this kill onto him. Choi is trying to survive. 40% to his mech back. The Gladiators coming back in with much more agile characters.
Nero and Violet, though, are just impossible to... Oh, that is such a good pulse! Just as I'm picking up how impossible it is to crack through that archway backline, Kevster goes and does it. Twilight not with them, able to deploy that immortality field, and the Tracer just rips through. An excellent point 8 defense, though, from San Francisco. The Gladiators barely managed to get hold of that. And now they're making a swap over to play Orisa here. Big swaps, actually.
Oh, big swaps.
Play May Hangzhou. We haven't seen this in quite some time.
Yeah, super. On the Orisa, I believe a recent switch over there, so not going to have that supercharger built up, and Nero coming close to the Molten Core. They force out Kevster's Ice Block early on. Birdring has found that turret, obviously has to respect the rest of the Shock here. Can't stay up on the bigger turret for much longer. Gives him a nice sightline, though.
Kevster with the pick onto Twilight. Managed to take down his immortality field and found the pick. The San Francisco Shock, they have to invest ultimates into this, otherwise they're not going to be able to sustain. But the trance in response for the Gladiators.
Yeah, Muse got chunked down. Shu, I think, had to use the Transcendence just to keep him back up into this one. And Choi, meanwhile, he's in the back line just trying to make the most of it. Frozen up and taken out, demeched. Carter's moving at a very big pace, yeah, and it's Kevster who's being able to find a lot of these targets. It was him that cracked open checkpoint A off the back of a nice power driver of Muse, and now he's really getting this cart rolling.
And now with Violet, no more flankers to have to worry about. Kevster's not on the Tracer, Birdring's not on the Sombra, so now we get to see the Violet Zen.
Dragon Strike is going to push them off the high ground here. They wanted to play up around that amp matrix. It's going to be up for about a second more and eventually fades. Super eating a ton of damage, though, and now another Dragon Strike. This is going to push them all away from the cart. Gladiators not in a position to contest this. In fact, they're prioritizing the high ground in the bottom left there. You can see them really kind of split up in 2 different directions here. Just trying to keep Choi up, but Frozen. Locked up, can't go anywhere. Glister, though, and Nero have definitely put the team on their backs, though. With these picks onto the backline, the Gladiators now don't really have the healing to try and take this fight. Ultimate's still committed. but I don't really think that's winnable. Super just about gets the shield down, so he's not going to be susceptible to getting brought down at the end of that fight, and a shot get a hold in a crucial position.
That could be a big mistake from Kevster. I'm not sure he was intending on the swap to the Tracer, but now, as May, with your Blizzard already gone, that is absolutely the right pick. He might be required to be on the Tracer just to keep Nero in check at least as well. But these backlines, they swapped over to Zen Bap because there was no flanking threat. And now that both teams have a Tracer, the Zen Bap backline is going to be susceptible. Choyobin initiated. Oh, that looked like it might be able to catch Shu, but he just gets around the corner in time.
Yeah, and that's in response to the supercharger. So Muse trading that one ult for another. That's Space. Beautiful lead there. Catching that one immortality field, also perfect there from Skewed. So it
Space
actually
ate the
stops
dragon.
Nero from getting a pick. Yeah, and Space with the eat earlier. That was fantastic for trying to set them up. Super with the supercharger. That's dropped down onto the corner. It's going to give them a lot of damage with the Transcendence. They need to try and convert this one. Shu, look at how aggressive he's being right now. He's basically leading the rest of his team into the backline, and Violet's going to be punished from it. Split away from the rest of the team. The heal's coming through now. The cart needs to be pushed in down to the final 37 seconds. High ground also contested. Nero trying to peel for the rest of his team. They don't want to lose control of it, but look at Twilight. His attention's being split. It's a good timing on that immortality field, and he's got the healing up for them.
Kevster with the pulse bomb only manages to take down the immortality field, but that might be what they need. Super and Glister also falling, and the San Francisco Shock, it's all falling to pieces. The Gladiators with only 14 seconds left, and a headshot.
That is nasty stuff from the Gladiators, being able to sustain throughout that entire team fight. Coming back in, the power driver from Muse as well, setting them up. You could tell that that team fight, the longer it went, the Shock were realizing their resources were dwindling more and more and more. The Gladiators just barely being able to scrape it through. They've been given a lifeline here. 1 minute 20 seconds.
The time bank is not going to be anywhere close to what the Shock said. Here comes Glister with a Dragon. Dragon to reply as well, as both Hanzo's traded out. Where is Twilight's immortality field? I don't think he's had to use it yet.
It's good presence of mind there from Space, holding onto the defense matrix. Stopped Birdring from going down there, actually, as he got halted into the line of sight of the out matrix, but you can see the off angle there by Glister, just hammering home a lot of the arrows. Bomb comes in, it forces out a Transcendence, but of course Gladiators playing very far forward. Nero 1 health and a dream, just about escapes out of it, but a Shock is still taking this team fight. Kevster takes out Glister. Glister not having the same response, I suppose, as he was having in the previous series, but the Gladiators are going to win that team fight out. 30 seconds now, desperate to finish with some time.
Space managed to find a kill on Violet just by suiciding into the backlines and giving up his mech for the pick. He did the same on point B to be able to take down Glister as well. This aggression coming out from the off tank. It looks foolish, but it's working so well.
What a stick, Kevster! The Transcendence healing not going to be enough to stop him, but Violet on the Zen comes off around the corner. That's the volley to take him out. And oh my goodness, that might just be it. Ultimate's committed, way too much damage to try and overcome. The Shock stopped them just short of trying to get that full capture. You'll be pleased with that one, taking Blizzard World. That was the Gladiators map pick. The Shock going to be overcoming everything to win out this one now.
That is a gigantic flip of momentum in the series. The Gladiators took the Shock to Blizzard World. It all makes sense. You like playing dive compositions, you like playing ball. Those comps are normally much better when it comes to Blizzard World, but their defense from the Gladiators just fell to pieces. The Shock's defense was pretty good. I loved seeing Violet back on Zen, the Zen backline, all looking great. But at the end of the day, they won in the first half.
I thought watching the Shock earlier today that this is probably the scariest they've looked all season. Quite a comfortable team right now, really defining the meta in their own real way. The Gladiators
gearing up for playoffs.
Staring down. They're gearing up for playoffs, and a playoff Shock is a very scary thing indeed. The Gladiators one map away from getting knocked out of the play-ins and not going to Hawaii. They're going to try and avoid that now on the other side of the break. We'll see what they've got in answer for us.
Push! Focus back. You have to come there. Nice.
Good shit.
Yeah, one more. Hey, wait, one more.
Calm down.
Welcome back from the break, everybody. This series, I mean, I'm loving it, honestly. This has been fantastic, I think, from both responses. I want to see the Gladiators now, though, kind of upset a lot of the narratives that have been built up about them not being able to adapt over the course of a series, because that's the real question for me now. We know that the Gladiators are a really good team, but performing under pressure is something that keeps getting brought up time and time again. What better way to dissuade the rumors and narratives, Josh, than them taking the map all the way to 5 right here, right now?
And the Gladiators have their opportunity to pick a map here, right? And they can pick from any of the escorts that are available. That's Havana, Route 66, Rialto. Knowing the Gladiators and what they like to play, I would say they've got a great chance of being able to execute something good on Route 66. We saw in our prior series with Atlanta playing against the Toronto Defiant that Toronto were able to play the ball compositions really well against Atlanta. Atlanta and the Shock play somewhat of a similar style. That's where I would have expected the Gladiators to go here. Just, it follows the same theme as them wanting to play on Ilios, wanting to play on Blizzard World, etc. And that's actually not the map that we've got coming up. So I am interested. Look at Birdring getting a back rub as well, making sure that he's in position to be able to carry.
Listen,
I'm not sure whether he wants more or he wants... Yeah.
Is that Defe? The iron shoulder. Listen, he's got some strong hands if it is.
Yeah, he knows what's required to forge shoulders into iron. So he's helping out with Birdring.
Yeah, we were just waiting for the players to get back into their seats as well. Go ahead.
This is such an important series, though, Brent. Both of these teams still have opportunities to be seeded as number 2 at the end of the season. These league points are so important. The Gladiators, Brent, look down and out at the end of the regular season in terms of getting that top 3 spot. Top 3 guarantees you getting into playoffs, for sure. And the Gladiators still have a chance of being able to do that. Yeah, they'd have to go crazy deep. I mean, in order to overtake the San Francisco Shock, they have to not only beat them right here, right now, but then they also have to make the finals of the Countdown Cup. So it is a big task for the Gladiators. But if they are able to get back in this series, it will feel winnable. Both of these squads have just wanted to go to Hawaii all year long.
They haven't had an opportunity to. Always stop short of the mark in the play-ins. But yeah, this is going to be it, really. Either the Shock are well on their way to Hawaii, or we're being carried all the way to the map 5. Havana is the map that the Gladiators have chosen to take us to here. We'll be witnessing it moving forwards. And
is that not interesting? I think that's a really interesting pick, honestly. The Gladiators not going for Route, you know, the classic Balls End Tracer Sombra kind of map. The Shock like to run a lot of Rhine. I think they would have run Rhine on route, at least for the final checkpoint.
Attackers incoming.
I'm wondering what we're getting here.
I mean, the ball can still be effective here, but I mean, I associate Havana really with a lot of these tanky compositions. Like you see the teams running right now, the Orisa comps. You can still
or even
run
the
ball,
Rhine, the like spawn camp defenses. That might be what the Shock goes for when the sides are flipped.
I wonder if there's an element of, again, trying to outthink your opponent in terms of, well, they would probably expect us to pick Route 66. They probably got some stuff prepped. We'll take them to Havana. And it's essentially almost a mirror match here in terms of what they're running. But obviously, not going to be opting to hold at the cart. So the Gladiators want to be just essentially not giving up any prior positioning. They want to hold at this corner. That's where they think they're going to get the most effective usage, I suppose, defending on checkpoint A.
Nero can theoretically apply a lot of pressure to the backline of the Gladiators, but he's got to worry about headshots coming out from Birdring and Kevster. One stray icicle or arrow, and Nero is out. So a lot of pressure on his shoulders to try and create distractions, open up space for the rest of his team, but not get punished.
I'm really surprised at the amount of space that's being given right now to the Shock. The wall doesn't get too much done. The halt is there, though. That's good. Glister could not run anywhere, and as Violet tries to take the high ground away, it's Birdring with the fadeaway arrow just to put him in his place. Make sure he double thinks, double checks, triple checks, whether or not he wants to go up to the high ground again.
Yeah, Birdring did fantastically in that team fight. He popped Storm Arrows and forced the recall out of Nero really early on. A little wry smile from Nero there as he gets caught, sent back to the spawn queue. And the Shock, you know, okay, Nero's going to go for Soldier here. A ton more shield break now for the Shock. This is going to put pressure on the front line instead of the back line.
Yeah, change of perspective in terms of how they want to take the team fights. Nero, you got to be worried about it now. As you can see him, he's just sprinting all the way up. Still going to be looking to take these off angles. Right around the side there. They do not expect this. Helix Rocket forces out the ice block. Almost took out Kevster if he wasn't really on the ball with it. But Glister with the arrows. Look at that. Straight across. The Dragon Strike from Birdring has to be an appropriate response here. It has to get value. And it does take out Violet. The arrows, the Storm arrows onto Super. It split the team up into 2 parts. And they can focus on the front line.
That was crazy. I mean, how does Violet end up getting caught in that situation as well? Immortality Field must have been forced out earlier on without me realizing or something like that, because the shock just collapsed. Great execution from Gladiators there. Birdring having a monumental performance on the Hangzhou so far. Let's look with his open picks. I mean, he got the opening kill there on Skewed. Skewed not normally playing the Zen for this team, most of all a Brig player.
Space with a bomb into the back! That is some orchestrated stuff. Twilight and Violet, they thought they were safe. That must have been directly onto the corner. The perfect positioning for that. I mean, I have been dead impressed with the level of play from the off-tanks this season, but you can tell how much work the Diva players in particular, I suppose, when they're playing that role, have put into just finding these self-destructs so they're always catching their opponents unaware.
Oh yeah, that's a lineup. He's got that written down in a book somewhere. Now Kevster with the wall, he got caught. He just got burnt down. And Shu, he popped the window to try and help. But now this is a big scramble.
Yes, the Gladiators are looking to try and stay alive in this one, but they've lost a lot of players in the middle of this one. The Immortality Field has to go down. Nero is so far forward. Self-destruct will remove Shu from the fight, and the cart will begin to move steadily around the bend. Gladiators, they do have ults if they wanted to potentially contest this one, but I don't know if they have the bodies. It might not even be on the cards for them to contest this one. Up on top, you can see Space was taking positioning, but yeah, they have to give this one up. The shock in a moment, not even phased by that 2k that Space had, I mean, achieved for the team. It was looking like the Gladiators were almost going to get the full hold there.
It was. Nero moving over to the May. The shock busted a lot of their ultimates in order to take checkpoint A. Makes sense. It's permanent progress after all, but this is going to set the ult economy in favor of the Gladiators for quite some time. Glista with an opening pick would be glorious right now. And Nero's taking a serious off angle. Shu going down is just exactly what the shock were looking for.
Birdring taking a ton of damage as well, poked around, has to use that Dragon Strike, and it is good, to be fair. The tanks pushed against the wall, Super just trying to stay alive behind his shield. But Violet, I mean, listen, when you put him on Zenyatta, it's essentially you got a third DPS player on the battlefield. You're going back in time to the triple DPS compositions, because he found that opening pick onto Shu. Just magic being created.
Yeah, that is just huge. I mean, Skewed, he gets the kill on Skewed as well. So Violet's just a one-man wrecking machine in the backline. And this is what I wanted to see from the shock, more of this. And it's forced Kevster to swap over to the Tracer in a desperate attempt.
Nero caught the tanks, but they don't have the damage to burst right through a lot of their armor and health. Transcendence used. The shock actually don't get too much done with this one. They're just going to have to kite back out of the way of this Amp Matrix from the Gladiators. Definitely a good opportunity for them to go in. You can see Space straight away right into the back. Has the self-destruct, but will he stay alive for much longer? Halted into the side. It's enough space created. The Gladiators are getting all the picks in the world. It's Kevster who's leading the charge for his team.
Great kills by Kevster on cleanup duty there. And like I said, Kevster's made the swap over here to try and put more pressure on the backline of Violet and Twilight. When you're playing May Hangzhou, it's a very front-loaded composition. So your backline isn't really getting pressured that much. The Zen can go crazy. So can Twilight, for that matter, actually. It's a ridiculous backline that the Shock have access to. So now Kevster is the one trying to keep the Shock in check. If the Gladiators can hold here, it would still be highly successful on Havana.
Blizzard in hand for Nero. He's not really in a position, though, to toss it out. That's a Transcendence forced. I think that's Choi. Really at a very aggressive angle here. Birdring trying to punish it, but he's been pushed off of the high ground. Catches him in the head. The arrow finding Choi as he was trying to get back into it, and the Dragon Strike is good. Not going to get cancelled up with the freeze. The Blizzard offloaded, but instantly you see an answer. Glister with the arrow straight into Kevster.
That's a
return. They've already demexed space as well.
This is huge. Unless Birdring can respond quickly, the advantage is going to go the way of the Shock. He oversteps himself. Birdring was trying to equalize, and he's just made things worse.
These teams are so good at somehow just finding opportunities out of thin air. Ultimate's committed, the Gladiators. It's two big ones at that, the Supercharger and the Amp Matrix, but do they have anybody to just pump through the damage? Nero going down could be big for them, but right now the Shock, they seem to have just surrounded them at every single angle and opportunity. Birdering from the far, he has potentially the arrows enough to close this one out, but not with the bodies they got onto the point. It's being contested. The Hold not going to be finding it, but that is going to be the cap in the end there. The Shock just about getting checkpoint B. Brought to the brink with that one. Somehow, these teams, I mean, I'm just less surprised almost at the end of every single team fight with the outcome of it.
Yeah, Buttering's been crazy on the Hangzhou, but I think he just overstepped himself there a little too much. We see this a lot in the Overwatch League, actually. When your team goes down, or even, you know, when your team is... When you feel like you need to do more than you can, and so you go into the carry mode, you tend to introduce more mistakes to your gameplay. You see here the backline of the Gladiators positioned inside. There's a crazy traceable one happening all the way in the backline over here.
And Kevster is deep behind
in
enemy
enemy territory.
He doesn't have a recall now for about 5 more seconds. I don't know if this is going to be punishable, but it gets called out. The Discord orb onto Kevster as he tries to escape. That's a kill. Gladiators, Space sends in the self-destruct, and they move forward to try and capitalize on the push forwards positioning. Muse, I'm not too sure what ended up happening there, but he just got chunked, tracked down. And, I mean, what was looking almost like a hold on checkpoint B right now, the Shock are not slowing down. They have ultimates for days, Josh, almost 6 online.
Yeah, they can pop anything they like here. They can lead it with the Dragon Strike, pop a window, use a Supercharger later on as well. They forced out double support ultimate from the Gladiators too. They can just counter window here. They didn't use their own. They can push back in whenever they like. But Glister's caught.
What? Nero goes down as well. The Amp Matrix must have just been up for 1 more second. The Shock, they've got to invest everything to try and turn this one, but the Supercharger, it's already gone. Kevster, he committed that post bomb for it. The boop to the side, Twilight's down. And his card, it will not be moving any further forwards. The Shock thought they had the right idea about it. They had 10 seconds left, they backed off, they wanted Violet to get back into the fight, but it was the individual plays from the Gladiators. Their team can absolutely contend with the Shock in terms of their mechanical ability, and it showcased just there stopping them.
That's absolutely true. The quality of the players on the Gladiators is extremely high, but I think over the course of this series and this map, it's been a difference in terms of who's made the more mistakes. The Shock haven't necessarily made these huge, big plays all the time in every map, I'm saying, in order to get the lead in the series. I think it's been more so the Gladiators making more mistakes. You know, you think back to the Blizzard World defense, you think in like the situations here on their defense as well. Hanamura, their offensive point B, trying to run the Genji. To me, this match has been defined by the Gladiators just making a few more mistakes in these high-pressure scenarios compared to San Francisco. And that was that's what was so delightful, watching the Shock at their peak in 2019, 2020. They just seemed to play... It seems like a cliche to say perfect Overwatch, and you know, there's always room to improve. But the minimization of mistakes leads to a very clean game, and I feel like that's what the Shock is trying to bring today. Trying to minimize mistakes as much as possible and force them out of the Gladiators. This was one of those situations where it just goes completely the other direction now.
Yeah. Individual heroics across the board from the Gladiators.
But that's
you're
what
right, Josh.
it took,
yeah. They just don't have the coordination. They've been making just one mistake more potentially in a team fight. That's all it takes to really turn it for these teams. When they're playing at such a high level. In the Overwatch League, to play in the Overwatch League, you need to be the best of the best. But to hang with the top, I mean, it comes down to just one mistake. Exactly. One mistake is going to turn the tide of team fights, and it is the best of the best of the best.
Here's Glister. You'd normally expect to see this from Ants, perhaps. But Glister is no slouch whatsoever on the hit scan. Very flexible player. Definitely more risky than running the Hangzhou, though. Your front line is going to get bullied. He needs picks.
Yeah, the Gladiators have pushed this card all the way deep here. The Shock giving them a lot of space for Birdering. This is aggressive from him. This is a naughty angle. Might be able to get a kill. Just about missed that arrow. Super getting chunked down to half HP. The heals come through eventually, but look at that shield just evaporate before our very eyes here. And now Space. He tried to apply a bit of pressure, I think, to the backline there. Ends up getting demexed, but it's an instant response. That Matrix is dangerous, but they are favoring their team to push forwards, but they are going to go down off the back of it. The Gladiators now, 5 minutes in the time bank, getting straight into checkpoint B.
That's another one of those situations, Brent, where Space runs forwards and it looks almost like he's feeding away his mech, but he makes so much space for the rest of LA. And he creates space for Kevster to get in the back, he makes space for his tank line to move forwards, for Birdring. He does not fear losing his life if it benefits the team. And that's one of the biggest things that Space has been adding to this Gladiator squad, this aggression.
Poor positioning being taken here. Kevster, that's the pulse bomb. Doesn't get too much, but now the Transcendence is being used by Violet. They feel like they have to use it. Muse goes down. Dragon Strike through the wall as well. Won't get what they were looking for here. In fact, it's a shock team fight win. As long as Nero survives here, this shouldn't be too dangerous for them. An important win for the Shock, honestly. In terms of what ults they invested there, I mean, the Transcendence, I think, was the only thing, possibly the Amp Matrix. I may have missed that one. You know how team fights get chaotic, but now they have this forward positioning, Josh, which is vitally important, especially when you're in this middle section of Havana.
Oh, Violet finds another pick. I mean, I was just about to talk about it. When the roles were reversed and it was the Shock attacking, Violet found just crazy picks. He killed the backline just by sniping them from long range. That's what it took for them to be able to get in. The Gladiators aren't even running a Zen in their backline. They don't have that option of the extra damage, the extra pick potential coming from the back. So for Gladiators, they're going to have to be so clean with their ult execution here.
That's a pulse bomb committed. Nero has to be intelligent with that, and it takes out the supercharger. It's good for them. Violet! I mean, okay. Just click it on heads, why not? Inspirational gameplay. I hope it doesn't inspire you though, Josh.
Oh, I love it. No, it really does. Violet is such a crazy good Zen. I was wondering where this guy was across the Countdown Cup. We've mostly been seeing him play Brig in these Reinhardt-centric compositions. Getting to see this BAP Zen backline is just making my heart explode. He's so phenomenal. He just knows where they're pathing to. These lineups they look random, but they're not. They're precision engineered to generate headshots.
Dragon Strike, the aggression doesn't stop there. In fact, Muse, he's dropped to the low ground. He's left skewed without really a hope in hell of trying to turn that team fight up onto the high ground. Yoinked around. Choi, but this time it's your turn to meet you in the gulag, the 1v1, but he's got his team throwing rocks from above. It's always quite annoying when you see that happen.
And I was talking earlier about the Shock not necessarily making these big plays, more about minimizing mistakes. Violet is the clear, massive exception to this rule. When Violet has been playing the Zen, he's big plays all the time. On offense, on defense, he's just pounding them out. And it's putting so much pressure on the Gladiators. Now Skewed is stepping up, trying to go toe-to-toe, putting out his own damage, his own Discord orbs. But how do you compete with Violet?
It's so difficult. Winning a Tracer 1v1 could be big though. And Kevster realizes there's no recall available. Meanwhile, it's a fight taking place on the front lines with the ultimates committed. Still an even fight, honestly. The Gladiators might opt to try and fight this one with Space still active and Skewed in the fight, but I just don't think they really have the damage output.
He is just dinking heads all over the place. By the way, his partner in crime, Twilight, has been putting up a phenomenal performance this entire time too. Immortality fields are always perfect, huge amounts of healing from the backline too. Both teams getting close to a supercharger fight, but again, this high ground control from the Shock is just devastating. Glister and Violet do so much more than their counterparts.
Supercharger dropped. They need to try and find this kill onto Muse. They've really chunked him down. That's the Immortality field from Shu. Keeps him alive. Now the Supercharger. They're going to try and actually counter this now with a bit of aggression of their own. It's a good Transcendence and a good push forwards. The Gladiators have finally broken through this forward defense. With a minute on the clock, it's about time. I think they had 5 minutes in the bank when they initially started it going. And the way these comps play, I think they're not really going to get an opportunity to contest. You can see Nero might be gearing up for it.
I think they might. They've got a Dragon Strike to try and force positioning, and this cart was a long way away. They are definitely going for this. Here it comes.
Oh yeah. Pushes them away, buys them a bit of time. Kevster, it's a really good presence of mind actually, just trying to lock off this bottom left section. That's a pulse bomb, and that is the target he was looking for. Super gone from the fight as quickly as he entered it. But still, it's an even battle between them. Kevs is still alive. No more recall available, but look at that damage. Shu with the Amp Matrix. There's no stopping him. He's able to just hammer home the bullets, empowered up by it, and that is going to be the capture eventually. Still shaky for them. Not over just yet, but they can see the finish line at least.
Deep breath. Minute and a half here for the Gladiators to be able to take us to a map 5 and keep their Countdown Cup hopes alive. If the Gladiators aren't able to win this map and take it forwards, they have no more access to further league points, and they'll have to go through the play-ins. This is such a huge moment in their season.
Some massive implications of the course of this match right here. What a bomb. They're also low, but the Immortality Field stops them from really falling below 1. That's all that matters at the end of the day. Kevster falls pretty early on there. Glister with the arrows. He's finding them one after the other. And it's another teamfight win here for the Shock. This is the round that stands between them and going to Hawaii, remember. This is the map they need to win to close it out in a 3-1 fashion. The Gladiators, though, with 50 seconds in a dream. They have ultimates coming up online. They've got to try and hold on strong right now, battle through. They can see where they have to push this card. It's just up the hill, just over the bridge. But it's a difficult, treacherous path ahead for them. Near the pulse bomb again. That's going to be committed to the supercharger. Removes it instantly, and now we see a bit of a breather between both these teams, taking a bit of a micro disengage as both of them really don't want to contest or commit into this fight. But now the ultimates come again. Space, though, a beautiful eat. No more Dragon Strike for them, and Kevster with the stick. It's good timing on the Immortality Field, but not enough to try and stop the damage coming through. Kevster's absolutely just sealed that one for them, and it's going to be the overtime push, Josh.
Phenomenal individual clutch plays from the Gladiators. They didn't even have to use their support ultimates. They can try and window here to create a little bit of space. But we saw how that went for the Shock. All comes down to this, one final fight. Super with the supercharger. This should really be an advantage to the Shock here, but if Skew just pops his trance and they overwhelm it, it's on the high ground. What do they do here?
Yeah, they can't
They're trying
touch
to
it.
disengage.
Nero buys some time with the ice block onto the objective here. Shu has taken so much damage. He's been pushed down to the low ground. He might be able to get the teammate, but Space, look at this angle. The Amp Matrix,
So much aggression.
so much damage, and the aggression is just enough. They pierce right through them. The Shock, they should have had the advantage, but not for much longer. That's going to be Havana going to the Gladiators, and we are going the distance here.
And the Gladiators' mentality is straight back into it. They were on a knife's edge there from slipping away and having that be the end of their regular season, but they survived. And the Shock still played a phenomenal game. That was a ridiculous map of Havana. The backline from the San Francisco Shock was spectacular. Twilight and Violet were just doing everything they could to try and keep their team in it. But that very final moment there, as Shu just uses his exo boots to get up on the high ground into Super's face, I think that was Shu trying to stamp his own mark of dominance on the series. Shu has slipped under the radar for so long in terms of being an elite level flex support, and you could argue he has in this series as well, but at the end, that was a Shu diff.
Yeah, the presence of mind to just jump up right on top of them, where the Shock weren't expecting it. What a way to finish Havana, and taking us to our final map, our decider map here for which team goes to Hawaii. So important for both of them. And it's all going to be decided on the other side of this break, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere. Oh, I don't even need to say that. I know you're not going anywhere. Doesn't get any closer than this. 2-2 is the scoreline in the series between both of these teams. Back and forth, back and forth. But eventually there can only be one winner that goes to Hawaii. The Shock and the Gladiators, over the course of the season, haven't had an opportunity to actually play there. And you can see right here, this is what they're playing for. It all comes down to it. I mean, they want to represent the West alongside the Atlanta Reign. This is it. This map right here that the San Francisco Shock are the ones get to decide, obviously coming off the back of a loss on Havana.
And that is so crucial as well, because the loss on Havana sets up a map pick here of Oasis. And you could have picked from any of the 4 control maps still available, but the San Francisco Shock, I think, particularly want to go towards Oasis because it offers them the ability to play on University, for example, where they can play their Reinhardt or Orisa compositions and get up and in the face of the Gladiators. This is it. The final map of the series that decides who goes to Hawaii. Neither of these teams have been able to go before to any of our stage finals in 2021. Constantly denied by Dallas, by Atlanta. But one of them will make it here today.
That's what it comes down to. Both these teams are just absolutely fighting tooth and nail for this one. And I believe the last time these two teams faced off against one another, week 11, ended up in a 3-2 win for the Gladiators. The Shock obviously being downtrodden, I suppose, by the Gladiators at lots of different opportunities. Looking to potentially get their revenge here, but more importantly, obviously the sights all set for both of these teams on winning it, getting to Hawaii.
5.
And importantly, Brent, the reason that Hawaii is important is because it gives you those extra points for playoffs. If the Shock wins this map, they guarantee their spot in the playoffs alongside the Atlanta Reign. The Gladiators really want to play upset here.
The teams have got it going. Symmetra out the gate, it gives the Gladiators a lot of mobility with this composition. It's a defensive wall there from Nero. Pushes them all away, but look at this aggression from the Gladiators. They're playing right up close underneath them, essentially mirroring both of these teams. They need to be careful of any halts that might pull them from one side to the next. A bit of a split approach here. I don't know if they know that Glister's taking this off angle. Super caught in the wall. Okay, they're going to be breaking a piece of it just so he can escape to the rest of his team. Right now it could be anyone's victory, but Birdering goes down. Too much damage to really overcome, but they're going to trade it out anyway. And it's been split all over the bloody shop. Shu just raining down the bullets, helping out the rest of his team. Might have overstepped himself, doesn't have the immortality field. He's caught in a slight angle here, but it's Choi the one who goes down.
Great defense played there to try and keep Shu alive. Couldn't say the same to keep Birdering up, honestly. And usually, if you lose your sim that early on in the fight, you just simply don't have the damage to be able to convert. But the Gladiators did, and they get up to 30% here. The Shock, window on both sides. Nero very close to being able to generate this blizzard, and walls all over the place.
Yeah, the wall to block that Amp Matrix, whether intentional or not, it does the job. And now you can see Kevster, he's holding on to the blizzard. This is their win condition for this next team fight, right round the corner. They haven't spotted it, the wall comes out the back. He's uncertain of whether to lay it down because of Choi Hyobin, but eventually he's going to get it going. They push forwards though, Muse goes down and skewed. The blizzard is good, it catches onto a multitude of targets, but the damage is already done. The Shock just press the advantage, pushing forwards into the supercharger and take out enough players. They're going to be able to flip the point over. Damage done though, as the Gladiators did manage to build up to 61%.
Yeah, really nice aggression actually coming out of the Shock in that team fight. They managed to forge a path forwards and get into the Gladiators' face way before Kevster could find any value out of his ultimate. And now the Shock, flipping things over, have a massive advantage when it comes to this supercharger. Super, with his Orisa ultimate, can easily win this team fight. It's about finding the correct value for it, because the Gladiators are going to try and probably bait it out and then disengage.
Dragon Strike now pushes the Gladiators forward here.
Oh, they're
going to be brawling right up close and personal here. That's Violet yoinked up into the air. Birdering follows up with the damage. Choi Hyobin, what is that? Oh my goodness, when it was looking over, when it was looking done, that is potentially round winning.
That is potentially game-winning. That is potentially season-saving for the Shock. Who knows? We'll see how the rest of this map plays out, but that is one of those insane plays that turns the tide of a team fight. I said the Gladiators might try and force out the Orisa ultimate and then disengage. They went just pedal to the metal, pushed with double support ultimate and went through the shock, ran over the supercharger, and were only stopped by the self-destruct. Now they have a Dragon Strike of their own to try and initiate with, and Space might be looking to do one better.
Choi Hyobin, they caught the wrong target on the other side of the ice wall. Choi was ready and waiting, he heard the sound cue, ran, beamed straight towards it. No more ultimate now for them. The Gladiators forced to commit their own ultimates. That's going to be the self-destruct into the backline there. Amp Matrix as well. Has to get kited. The Gladiators playing indoors now, but it's 90% and counting. They need to turn this team fight around. They need something to do it. But now the Dragon Strike of their own. Glister has caught them completely unaware. The Gladiators, they're falling one by one here. Space at the tail end of it is going to eat up the Blizzard, but it's all for naught as the round is going to go to the shock.
That is such a huge Dragon Strike by Glister as well. Catching Kevster when he had his Blizzard available. There were no effective Blizzards coming out from the Gladiators. I mean, hell, from both teams, actually. But those were so often set up as win conditions for the LA side. And it feels, Brent, like this is one of those maps where just the experience, the big game players step up. Choyobin has been, you know, somewhat quiet over the course of this series. Hell, been somewhat quiet over the course of the season, but this play is just gorgeous.
Oh, wow.
Lands on top of the podium, so it has line of sight to everything. And he crushes the Gladiators, gobbling up a Dragon Strike in the next team fight as well.
Yeah,
and we've got traces on
massive
both
impact
sides.
round. Exactly right. I mean, he's had a quiet season and a bit of a quiet series, but that is explosive. And now the Shock one round away from going to Hawaii, one round away from securing their playoffs in the overall season. That's what they're playing for. The Gladiators, they've got to battle back. They've got to try and deny it now. Good headshots. Everything connecting there for Birdring. Now he's moving around up onto the high ground. Yeah, look at that. Just forcing them all to move around the corner. It's the Gladiators with the positioning advantage onto the point. In fact, they've almost capped up the point. The Shock, the shield has gone down. Super, a bit of danger, but pops off that Fortify now. Birdring finding so many shots on target. This could be a game changer for them, but now the ultimates come out. The Shock not willing to give this one up, and the aggression. The Gladiators, they press their march. Look at that, straight into the back line, and they're going to come up with the goods anyway.
That's that aggression from the Gladiators. Just the go button gets called. It was looking dangerous there for a moment from Birdring's perspective, but the Gladiators all move forward as a unit. Space again giving up his mech, but not worried about it in the slightest. Happy to do that and sacrifice himself for the rest of the team. The Shock built up to a way earlier window there. The Amp Matrix came through from Twilight far before Shu was even close. All of that damage from Birdring converted into support ultimate charge, but then the Gladiators just forge a path past it. Great decisive play, proving that they have what it takes as well, that championship mentality. See whether it lasts.
Yeah, they're going to try and win out this team fight. It's a good pulse bomb. Forces them back down onto the ground. Nero answers with one of his own though, and now the supercharger again for the Shock here. With Muse going down on 95%, they don't have one of their own to answer with, so the Shock, they win the team fight out handedly off the back of that advantage.
That flips the ult economy around as well, honestly. Super being able to win the team. By the way, Super has been getting up to those ults consistently faster than Muse. And that's a bit of a meme, you know, your Orisa's doing more damage. But when it comes down to a 10% difference and Super's able to put down that ultimate earlier and get a teamfight win and draw both defensive support ultimates, or both support ultimates rather, out of the Gladiators and still win, it makes a critical difference in those teamfights.
The little advantages just adding up here for the Shock. They still have a bit of a deficit when it comes to the round percentage though, so the Gladiators, now they've got their supercharger, but that is a bit of a mistake. The angle that was at, it was easy pickings. It could be destroyed almost instantly. Bit of a misplay there from Muse, and now they're trying to take the team fight further forward. Glister is going to opt to ignore the Tracer that's just peppering him. Kevster, not worth his time for the moment, but has the Deadeye, and now he's going to look to channel it. Pushing them away, holding it. 2 more seconds in his hands. Might be able to get a target or two, but he gets ate up by Space.
Birdring went for his own there as well. Not exactly sure what that was. Maybe just trying to push Nero away, perhaps? Or get a reload. Here's some aggression, some initiation from the Shock. Twilight so weak!
Yeah, that's a great kill onto Twilight and Violet. The backline missing now. The Shock, they're going to be losing this team fight. It's inevitable. what comes down to is how many players it can take down with them. It doesn't seem like that's many at all. A quick turnaround there for the Gladiators, a necessary one for them to stay into this series.
And we've got another scenario where the ults are wildly out of sync with each other. The Shock are going to be set up with a supercharger, Gladiators with double support ultimates. See whether Super can generate the same value he did previously out of that enormous Orisa ult. Statistically, one of the most important, impactful ultimates that there is in the game when you have team fights like this. The Gladiators bait them in.
Yeah, this is almost textbook coming out from them. The Shock, though, Super not close to the supercharger. He lays it down anyway. He has faith in the team, but I think the damage is more than done right now. The Gladiators, they brought them so low in the middle of that. The middle of these ultimates. 1 for 2. I suppose the Shock are thinking, well, okay, we use the supercharger there, force out double support ultimates. But look at the Gladiators now, only 15% away, and they're going to be walking away with a round.
Yeah, the Shock have a pressure just to be able to touch the objective. Then they have to try and work their way forwards. Twilight's window can't find as much value as Shoes did just because of their positioning, but they're going to go with it anyway.
Deadeye into the back, that's Birdering. Just trying to push them away. Glister still holding on to his, and Kev's searching for the perfect timing. Nero's there. That's another supercharger. What a stick! Immortality Field, though, is going to eat it up. Again, Twilight has been impeccable with these, but it's Space. Space, the one to close it out. That two-piece of the self-destruct. No Immortality Field to stop it. Already forced out prior, thanks to Kevster. And that's going to be the round to the Gladiators. Could this series be going further than this? A final round to decide which team will be going to Hawaii.
Ridiculous. The Gladiators battling back. At no point do they look like they're giving up. They've had scenarios in this series where they've been rattled, where they've been tested, where they've been pushed to their limit, but they've made it all the way against a core team of the greatest of all time. Let's take a look at this replay of what happened here as well. That pulse bomb forcing out the Immortality Field, and then Space just realizes that sets him up to glory. Twilight not quite getting behind Violet's barrier in time there, but I think it would have been easy pickings anyway, even if he had. And now the Shock. Here we see massive differences in terms of their approach. You could not get two different styles here.
What a way to finalize it as well. This round right here, both teams with different compositions, different ideas of what the meta should be. Gonna start the clash now in the city center. High ground taken up early by the Shock. This Reinhardt comp, it's all about closing the distance as best as you can when you don't have the speed boost. It's going to be hard to get into the right positions and set up the right team fights. The Gladiators just going to try and rotate, poke them down, maybe get a pick off.
I need healing. They're just looking for that opening pick. You can see both of the players, DPS players from the Gladiators, looking to put the pressure on Nero, and they find it. Kevster forcing out all of those abilities, setting up an easier killer from Birdring. Still not an easy one to hit though. Phenomenal stuff.
Unbelievable arrow. And now when they're missing that player, Super with a Discord on him, his shield almost destroyed. Birdering's actually the one to go down. Choi is going to probably sacrifice his mech for that one. Is it going to be enough to turn this team fight around? Kevster with the stick, perfect timing and spacing, and that's actually going to catch onto Twilight as well. Landed directly into this. Ultimate's committed by the Shock, but nothing to show for it.
What a spectacular turnaround. This game is just tremendous. There are so many players with individual opportunities to make these moments that just turn the tide of a fight. And now Super's making his way over to Orisa. The Shock are going to be playing a very static composition here. Should allow Birdring priority access to high grounds. Shu and Skewed might try and get themselves up there as well, but it's mostly just about backing off away from the Shock, trying to kite them. They are going to find it so difficult to flip this objective away from the Gladiators.
Yeah, it's going to be a miracle if Shock end up taking this, to be honest. Having to swap up bits and pieces of your composition. Already the Gladiators up to 60% and counting here for them. You're going to see the support ults traded, rally for both teams. Nero needs to find a target. That's going to be a bit of a fade away, but it's a whiff. Not finding the one target he needed. If he could remove that rally from the fight, it could have been tremendous for them. Now the Dragon Strike, it pushes them all back, and the Gladiators, they're doubling down. The ultimates come through with almost 80% and counting. If this is a staggered out team fight, it's looking all over.
The Shock are going to have one last opportunity. Mercifully, Choyobin is executed quickly there, and he'll get back from the spawn queue. But Super's made the swap over to ball. Violet to Zen. It's last chance. Desperation picks.
And they're probably going to be able to touch unless the Gladiators have got good presence of mind here. Super early
Nero
on,
caught.
finding it. Nero goes down, caught out. That's the overtime going, but at what cost for them? Can anybody touch this? They can, just about. Choi finds his way around. Kevs is in the backline as well. This could be it. This could be where the Gladiators just upset all expectations. They're the ones who commit. One bomb into the backline. Choi catches it onto Birdering, but with the overtime burning, the Shock desperately trying to touch bodies onto the point. It's not going to be enough. The Gladiators have got more than enough damage right now. Nero, so weak, eventually brought down to his knees, and that is the Gladiators taking it. You can see how much it means to them. They are up in the air, holding one another. The community narratives for this team as well. Everybody expecting them to fail. Everyone expecting them to crumble under the pressure. But they are the ones who are advancing to the Countdown Cup tournament. They are the ones who are going to Hawaii, not the San Francisco Shock, not today.
It had to be a new team either way. Neither of them made it to a stage final so far in 2021, but right at the end of the season, the Gladiators fulfill their expectations. At the beginning of the season, everyone had this as the preeminent battle in the West. The defending champions, the back-to-back San Francisco Shock against the new blood, the team that had taken Moth. We didn't even see him being played today. It was Skewed and Shu in the backline that have powered this Gladiators team to a victory. And my word, was it hard fought. The Shock players are in absolute despair. They realize that their season is ended without a stage finals appearance. A disappointment for them, but I'm sure they will rally mentally for the rest of the postseason. They didn't look too shabby whatsoever. This was an insanely hard fought battle between two top tier teams. But it is the Gladiators and the Atlanta Reign who are going to represent the West in the Countdown Cup. Two teams with more different styles you could not find.
What a series, honestly. And you can see how much it means to the Gladiators players. I mean, that is just incredible. I love these moments as well. A team that the entire season long, the community's expectations for them has been so high, and they just haven't really lived up to it in terms of qualifying, but now they can say they are advancing to the Countdown Cup tournament. They can gain some of that playoff experience just before the overall playoffs. Let's take a look at our player of the match. One individual really shone above a lot of the others in terms of his impact. It's got to go to Birdering. This guy, the veteran presence. I mean, it's kind of indescribable, honestly, his impact over the course of some of these rounds and some of these maps. But the opportunities he was finding on the Hangzhou, the picks off the back of it, the aggression and playing around it was just imperative for them winning the overall series.
It absolutely was. Birdering was spectacular throughout this series. And what impressed me the most, honestly, about this Gladiators win is that they were taken to the brink. Hanamura was an utter stomping in favor of the San Francisco Shock. The Gladiators got rinsed on Blizzard World as well. Their defense crumbled and fell to pieces. That was their map pick. And yet throughout it all, they managed to battle back to eventually win 3-2. I think that speaks to some of the improvements that the Gladiators have gone through.
Absolutely.
In prior seasons, with potentially prior rosters, maybe even at the beginning of this season, they would not have won a game like that. It would have slipped through their fingers and everyone would be saying, oh, same old Gladiators. They can do well, but they can't win these big games. We're now seeing the Gladiators turn that narrative around at the most crucial part of their season. Brent, I just want to remind you as well, this keeps their guaranteed playoff spot chances alive. If they go now into Hawaii and they make the finals, they've overtaken the San Francisco Shock, and they are actively competing with the Atlanta Reign in terms of who can acquire more league points to potentially get the Gladiators to a guaranteed playoff spot. They wouldn't have to battle through the play-ins. That's what's on the line for these players. It's so much. We think about the regular season as potentially being ended now and the Countdown Cup just being some capstone at the end, but it is very much alive and very important for both of the teams that the West has sent.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what an astounding series, I think, to end the Countdown Cup play-ins as well. Really going the distance between all these teams. Potentially one of the best play-ins that we've had, actually, out of all of the tournaments. And obviously, the action doesn't stop. Next week, we go again. It's the Countdown Cup time, I believe, kicking off. So there we go. Interview with Space coming up as well as after the break. And as well as that, the Watchpoint post-show. So thank you very much for joining us for now. But obviously, don't leave just yet. Plenty more Overwatch League content and action heading towards your screen shortly, so we'll see you in just a few.
Baby! Do this, Let's go.
Play the game.
Welcome to the Watchpoint Post Show. We're joined now by Space from Los Angeles Gladiators. Sorry about that. All right, Space, congratulations on the win. How are you feeling right now, bro?
Amazing, bro. I'm super happy we closed it out for sure. It was a really close game.
Yeah, it really was. You know, this was, like you said, a very, very close match, and it was a really, really good match, in my opinion, as well. You know, obviously, close game. It was a difficult fight, but at the end, Gladiators came out on top. How did you guys do it?
Honestly, like going into the series, I think when we started to lose maps, we had lost Hanamura and Blizzard World, and we were coming up on Havana, and I told my guys basically that a lot of us were really tilted and like super sad with their performance. I just told them like, look, whatever you did can't be worse than what I did, because I got hooked right out of the Hanamura first point gate and I whiffed my grab completely on Blizzard World. I got nobody. I told them like, whatever you did can't be worse than that, and I'm not tilted at all, so you guys all have to regain. And then everybody laughed, and it kind of just brought the momentum back for us, and that really like snowballed the mental game for us. So I was like really super proud of my boys for that.
Alright, I guess you sort of sacrificed yourself and you came out to make your teammates feel better, and that worked, because at the end you guys did win. And you know, with this win, of course, you guys are going to Hawaii, and your first opponent is going to be the Chengdu Hunters, who have been dominating in the East. What are your personal thoughts on the Hunters in the Countdown Cup, and is there a player that the Gladiators should be wary about?
So the Chengdu Hunters are a super strong team. I think they probably have the best like some of the best teamwork out of all the teams in the league for sure, and just like a solid roster. I'd say the one player we have to look out for is Eve. Like I think he had an insane MVP performance last countdown or last Summer Showdown, the cup that they played in. He had an amazing, outstanding performance. So I think if you can shut down Leaf, we'll be solid. And that's like the only player you have to really worry about.
Okay, nice. And one final question for you, Space. This is a very serious question. You know, like I said, this is your first time in Hawaii. I don't know if you've been to Hawaii, you know, on a family trip or whatever, but as a part of the Gladiators team, you're going for the first time. Is there anything that you're looking forward to doing in Hawaii other than winning the Countdown Cup? Don't say, of course, that's like the priority. I know that, but anything else?
So what I'm looking forward to is just spending time with the guys and getting outside. Honestly, we really never get outside as a team. So to see the beaches and to see the sun and go try food in Hawaii is just definitely what I'm looking forward to. And like getting that travel experience for us is going to be super, super critical for playoffs. So I'm just looking forward to hanging out with the guys and, you know, competing and playing our hardest in the Countdown Cup.
All right, amazing. Space, thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for the interview and good luck in Hawaii, brother.
Thank you so much, bro. I appreciate you.
All right, let's head back to the desk.
Thanks a bunch, Danny. Yeah, it's always great to hear from Space, and he said so many great things, which I really want to discuss here on the desk. First and foremost, of course, the way that he rallied the team after it wasn't looking too hot, like that is just so important. Like Shock is one of those teams, we know they can take it all the way because they have that mental fortitude, right? Like when things are not looking too good, like they are able to rally and just get back into it. And I think a lot of teams, this is where they crumble. It's not for lack of skill or something. It's usually just the mental aspect of it. So for him to be able to like bring it back like that, what an amazing performance from both of these teams, guys.
Yeah, Space showing what a great leader he is and like how much he brings to this roster. Just putting yourself there, like putting yourself at the front of like, it's very easy to get tilted, and that's one of the things that we always talk about with the Gladiators. This is the hook that he was talking about, by the way. It's so easy to get tilted when you have two really bad maps like they did on this Hanamura and the Blizzard world. So I had counted them out. One of the things that I always said about the Gladiators is that they can't close. We know the San Francisco Shock are a great team at closing, but the Gladiators, that's always been their sort of white whale in the Overwatch League, is every time you get into those playoff matches, the matches that really matters, the Gladiators crumble. And I think Space is, you know, sort of being a great leader, rallying his team, and they came back and they looked so good. I don't think anyone would have predicted that the Gladiators would go to map 5, round 3, and be able to close it out and do it in the performance that they did. I do want to give a special mention. He got player of the match as well. Birdring on that Hangzhou.
Oh,
I don't know why they haven't been playing more Birdring Hangzhou, because all I want to see for the rest of the Countdown Cup is that Hangzhou, Johnny, because you complimented it as well.
Oh yeah, I was balding about it on this one. This play, by the way, from Shu right here in overtime to win Havana. I mean, this is one of the best plays of the season, because, you know, on the outside you might be like, well, you know, that was a planned play, they've practiced that, done that before. With Hawaii on the line, to do that, Costa knows as well. Generally when it's overtime, you know, you get a bit more, not anxious, but you play a bit more safe, you play a bit more secure. To instead just go for a play like that, to put that down the amplification matrix, not on the cart, not to heal your team, but to go aggressive and shut down the Shock instead, that's a massive play, and I got mad respect for Gladiators for pulling that off and forcing Oasis. But I want to backtrack to what you mentioned as well, Zoe. Just breaking this hurdle for the LA Gladiators. They've been here in knockouts before, they haven't qualified for Hawaii, and this has been the story for the Gladiators for years now. Not only in 2021, but 2020, 2019, Gladiators has always been a great team, but they've never been able to fulfill that come playoff time, come eliminations matches. And defeating the San Francisco Shock here as well, I'll tell you, when Twilight and Violet is in the Shock backline, you're playing Super and Choyobin. They're playing some of the best Overwatch they have in a while, playing the Orisa meta, of course, that they're known for playing so well. It felt like the Shock of old. It really did, like the juggernaut, the San Francisco Shock. They never lose these scenarios. And instead, the LA Gladiators, they finally complete that scenario where they take down one of these teams, they cross that hurdle, and they qualify for a stage playoffs. I mean, that's an amazing storyline. So very happy for the LA Gladiators. I know how much they've worked for this. I know how hard they've practiced for this moment. you know, gutting to see Shock go down like this. Just an amazing match overall with so many storylines tied into it.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't praise the San Francisco Shock enough as well for their performance. Unfortunately, Gladiators did take that one in the very end. I mean, I say unfortunately for them, but great for the Gladiators. Another thing that he also mentioned in the post-game interview right here, which I want to hit upon, is when he said that he's just looking forward to, you know, being with the boys and like spending that time, and that this is important for them heading into the playoffs. That is actually a huge point, something we haven't discussed too much, because that is in fact so important, right? Custa and Reinforce, you know that as former pro players, like getting that team bonding almost in those kind of scenarios, that puts the team together in a different level.
It's getting on a plane, because when you're gamers and when you're these professional things, when you're in your team house or your apartments, everyone's just gaming all the time. The nice thing about getting on a plane with your team is that you, for better or worse, you guys are stuck with each other, and that's what's going to happen when they go to Hawaii. They're going to be stuck together. They're going to be able to spend more time together, and they're going to feel good about each other. It's an awesome bonding experience, and that's teams that generally go to these kind of events and travel together generally come out stronger. So I want to see that from the Gladiators. This is the perfect time for them to peak, and this is going to be a great opportunity for them.
And also, as well, just getting the experience of traveling somewhere and playing on different settings, because I can't tell you enough about how different it is to actually go to a setup somewhere that's not in your room, that's not in your office, and go play there. Like the AC is different, the temperature is different, the table height is different, the chairs are different, and that actually makes a difference on how these players perform, whether it's mental, saying like, oh, you know, I wish I was in my office, I wish, you know, things were like they were back at home. Well, you can't do anything about that. I mean, now you're in a playoffs, this is where you have to play, and you have to deal with those circumstances, and getting some experience with that, being able to accept that, does like a big difference also in your performance on stage. So going into playoffs in Arlington, in Texas, for some of these teams, if they make it, just being able to deal with that moment and that experience will be a learning lesson for them, and something that they can learn from and actually take with them into playoffs, just like you said, Zoe.
Absolutely. Yeah, Danny, great interview there, really. We got so much great inside scoop from Space, so shout out to him once again for, you know, providing all of that. Now, of course, that wasn't the only match being played today. We had 4 overall, and another one had that Hawaii ticket on the line, and that, of course, was the Atlanta Reign going up against the Toronto Defiant. Now, this was a good showing for the Toronto Defiant, but Atlanta just had the upper hand in the end, and with Pelican out of the lineup temporarily, Edison had to step it up today to fill in the gaps. We got to see him on a variety of different heroes, such as Spara, like stuff we're not necessarily super used to seeing from him. What are your thoughts on this rendition of Atlanta Reinforce?
Well, it's still the Atlanta Reign of old, where they can play this kind of Orisa composition, but it was very interesting